pretty intertwined. And I just want you to know that I know that. So then the question becomes, well, why do you listen out separately then? And the answer to that is, I think, sort of best offered in an analogy to the theater in the round. So think of a theater in the round. You've got the play in the middle. Think of the play like the lesson. It's not a perfect analogy, but it works for this. So you've got the play. Now it's a theater in the round, right? So, and the audience is sitting all around. Because the audience is sitting all around, the lights have to come from all directions. I think of these things like the lights. Here we have the lesson, but let's just focus on the question, or the procedures, or the interaction, right? And so when you think of it in that way, this framework then becomes an analytic tool. And in a sense, that's all it is. An analytic tool to understand. Which means then, it is useful for professional development. That is one of the drawbacks of using measures of student learning as the only indicator of teacher effectiveness, is that it doesn't give teachers any information. That is, you get a number, but it doesn't tell you what you should do differently to get a better number, right? Whereas any sort of an analytic framework like that, this is about practice. It does give you that information, and it offers teachers some idea of what they might do differently. Okay, so as you know, for each of the components, there's a chart that looks like this, levels of performance. And I described 4 levels of performance and satisfactory, basic, efficient, distinguished. We could spend the next 3 days on this, and I promise. I won't even really spend any time on it. I will simply say one thing, that basic level, the descriptors for basic level are, well, first of all, these are levels of performance of teaching, not of teachers. Secondly, as you move across the continuum, it's a reflection of greater experience and expertise. So that's the second thing to say. The basic level performance is performance, though, that is typical of student teachers and first-year teachers. Often people who have good preparation, and sort of know what is the right thing to do, they just can't always pull it off, for reasons that have mostly to do with lack of experience, and they don't have a plan B. It's enough to have a plan A. And so when things sort of start going awry, they tend to soldier on because they have to. But that's sort of the big idea there. Proficient level practice reflects good, solid professional teaching. And if I were in a position now of offering a tenure contract to a teacher or a continuing contract, I would want to see a lot of performance at the proficient level. There are exceptions, of course, like when somebody changes levels, and you go from 5th grade to 2nd grade, and you have to, like, you're like a new teacher again, isn't it? But that's the big idea. The distinguished level of practice is different in kind, actually. That is, it reflects a classroom where a teacher has created a community of learners with the students, and the students themselves assume quite a bit of responsibility for what happens. It's very high level, hard to do. In the Met study, we found not much evidence of it, for some, but not as much as you'd hope to see, and that was sort of sobering. So in any event, it's a very high bar, but it's what we need. But we did find in the Chicago study that when teachers did teach at that level, their value-added scores jumped dramatically. And so it's an important goal to have. So the framework has evolved, as I mentioned. If you were a member of ASCD in 1996, you would have gotten a copy of that brown book, tumbled out of your mailbox, actually, in 1996. Then in 2007, we did the 2nd edition, and the main addition to that was those non-classroom specialist positions, as I mentioned. And I just, fixed a few things and so on. But it was not much different in substance from the 1996. The 2011 was done because we discovered in a precursor study to the Met study, there was a precursor, same design, they're called UTQ, Understanding Teacher Quality, I guess. Same basic design as the MET study, but not done electronically. It was done by face-to-face training and then observations in live classrooms and correlations with student learning. What we found, and they were using a slightly modified version of the 2007 framework, they found, what we all collectively found was that we could not train observers to acceptable levels of inter-rater agreement and accuracy to use as the foundation for assessment. And they said if you can't, and by the way, an inter-rater agreement is better than not agreement, but it's not enough. That is, what we found was that people can agree with each other and be wrong, actually. And so consistency is better than inconsistency, but it's really not sufficient. So basically what they told me when we were gearing up to do the MET study was that if you don't have an instrument you can train to, you don't have an instrument. Bottom line. And so I almost threw in the towel, I have to say. But I got a night's sleep, dug it in, and then came up with it 2011, and I'll explain a little bit about that in just one second. And then that has now been superseded by the 2013. Those two are available for a free download on my website. Or you can buy a little bound copy. And if you're going to do that, I would urge you to get the 2013 to I'll explain why. So in the 2011, what I did there was, it has the same architecture. But compared to the 2007, I wrote the rubrics at the component level rather than the element level. And if you remember back to the rubric slide, that's one component. It's got two elements, so there's two lines on it. I just collapsed them, mostly for reasons of cognitive load. The element rubrics are very, very useful for sort of analytic and diagnostic purposes, but it's a lot to hold in your head. So I simplified them a little bit and tried to capture the essence of the component in these component level rubrics. Tightened up the rubric language quite a bit. And then added, and this was the really important innovation, critical attributes and possible examples for each level of performance for each component. That has turned out to be enormously helpful to people to envision what it really looks like. So it was used as the basis of the FFT proficiency system that I mentioned to you as the outgrowth of the MET study, and then accompanying training materials that we've done. And then practitioners sometimes say, well, we've done all this training on the earlier work. Is it all forgotten? No, it's still relevant. You'll just find this an easier instrument to use. And the same thing is true then of the 2013, because what it does, well, let me just back up here for a second. The ink has not even dried on some of these new evaluation systems around the country. And all of a sudden, now here's the common point, right? And I must say, practitioners are really, they just are. And so what we've experienced is that people in schools and school districts, they are confronted with what feels to them like two enormous initiatives, separate initiatives. What I've been trying to figure out with people is, no, let's make them be one initiative. Let's just have an instrument that actually reflects the Common Core. And that's what the 2013 does. So that's ongoing work. That is, the Common Core state standards, as you know, are a new answer to the question, when the student walks across the stage and collects the diploma, what does that mean? What claim are we making about what that student knows and can do? What are we turning loose on the world, basically, right? In schools. And Common Core state standards are offering us a radically sort of accelerated answer to that question. Now, the jury's still out on how well it's going to go. And we won't know till the assessments. I mean, this is a long project. But at the very least, one of the challenges is that many teachers were not ever trained to teach to those outcomes. And so at the very least, we'd be able to better identify what those implications are. So that's what the 2013 version of the framework. It's my first attempt to answer that question. And by the way, I didn't have to do much. I mean, the big ideas are all shared with public. Some of the nuances of it. And remember too, Common Core state standards are discipline specific, right? For ELA, literacy, and mathematics. My framework was generic. And so I couldn't write into the rubric language or into the critical attributes anything to do with a specific discipline, because then it wouldn't apply to all the others. Right? So where I put those things are in the possible examples, but then there are some big ideas that are pervasive through the Common Core, like argumentation, like precision, like a deep conceptual understanding of whatever the content. Those I could make sure were embedded into the basic framework. So there's that. I won't speak much about the student perceptions. We've got a couple of interesting projects going. That was an outgrowth of the MET study that helped everybody see the value of student perceptions in understanding the teaching. We've been doing some work on special needs applications, and this will be on our website very soon, by the way, if that's an interest of yours. We've had a team working to develop some scenarios, sort of extended examples of what the different components of the framework look like for different categories of disability, by the way, at different levels of performance. So, and that will be an evolving project, but we've got a good first draft, and it's been for editorial review, but it should be up soon. And then some blended training with the online resources. So, looking at the framework, these are the components where, so far, I know that the Common Core intersects with the framework. Those are the ones in red. It's not all of them, and it's not much of them in two, predictably, right? But it's the big ones in domain one, and then almost all of them. Okay, I want to speak, we've just got about 10 minutes here. I'd like to just speak for a few minutes about remember the second of our whole purposes of teacher evaluation was promote learning. And so we better spend just a minute because it's really important. So what do we know about professional learning? Well, let me remind you of sort of obvious, again, it sounds fun to say it. Professional learning is learning. That means we can apply what we know about learning to it, and the main thing we know about learning is that learning is done by the learner through an active intellectual process, right? That applies to adults as well as kids. So, all right, let's think about a traditional, typical observation supervision process. So let's say I'm the teacher here. Here's how it goes, right? You come to my class, you watch me teach, you take notes. You go away, you write up your notes, you come back, and you tell me about my teaching. I would only ask you who's doing the work. What am I doing? Nothing. Well, I'm teaching my class. I am under contract to do that. But for this process, what am I doing? Sitting. And so, and it gets worse, by the way. Now we're in your office and we're talking about this lesson. I know that from the standpoint of that conversation, all I have to do is endure it. You will eventually stop talking. And I can leave. I mean, should we be surprised that teachers don't learn anything from this? Well, no, actually. It's exactly what we should expect. Because they are not doing anything. So, all right. So what do we know then about professional learning? Well, first of all, it has to happen in an environment of trust. Well, now that's a problem. I mean, we're talking about performance appraisal, right? I mean, fear shuts people down. This is not a new finding. Fear shuts people down. So, what this means is that we shouldn't be surprised when, especially a new teacher, will learn more from a mentor than from a principal. It makes common sense, right? Because it's a safe. They can be honest. They can burst into tears if they learn. They can admit where they're having difficulty. They are unlikely to admit that to a supervisor. Because you never know. This is somebody you don't know very well, right? You've just been hired. You don't know that somebody's not going to use that against you. So I would simply say that a A supervisory relationship with a first year, maybe even a second year teacher, is going to have this inherent tension in it. And you can do the best you can, but I would also, if you're a principal, urge you to try to build in supports for teachers by non-supervisory coaches, mentors, and so on. But the other things about professional learning, we can kind of apply anywhere. Because professional learning is grounded in self-assessment, reflection on practice, and professional conversation within a context of a community of learners, a community of professional input. So, all right. So, how does that look in practice? Well, if this is a class, a lesson, and these starry dots represent everything that happens, and if it were really a lesson, there would be, of course, hundreds of them. So let's say now I'm the teacher I'm the observer, you're the teacher. So I'm the observer now, and so I'm coming to watch this class, and let's say I'm watching for the things in the framework, but I'm just going to talk about one component. I'll talk about 2A, evaluative, respect, and rapport. Now, I'm the observer, and so I will pick out 3 things that I see that happen that are to do with respect and rapport. Now, one of them might also be about something else, questioning and discussion. So it might be an exchange between a teacher and a student that you can talk about the quality of the questioning and the interaction, also the supportiveness and the rapport. So it's 2 different aspects of that same interaction. But in any event, and that's the nature of it. Sometimes pieces of evidence actually do fit in more than one place. Okay, now these 3 things count as evidence if they satisfy these criteria. First of all, they are accurate and unbiased. Now that's not a trivial issue, and as anybody in measurement knows, that bias is, and we're not talking racist or something, just bias, professional preferences, personal preferences. Some people are just turned off by a messy room or a messy desk or something. So anyhow, that's one of the things you have to do in training is correct for that. So they're accurate and unbiased, the evidence statements. Not judgmental, they're not inferential, they're just the facts. That they're relevant. If I'm the observer and I say this is about 2A, it is. It's about respect and rapport. It might also be about something else, but it is about respect and rapport. And the ones I pick should be representative of the total. I mean, there might have been 8 things to do with respect and rapport. I didn't just pick out the 3 negative ones. Okay, so now we've got our evidence. And this is a lot of what we do in training. And it's, it's not a really hard skill, but it's a skill and you have to learn it. And now, I'm the principal now, though, I'm the supervisor. I've watched a lesson, I've taken my notes, and now I give a copy of the notes to the teacher. And my question is, did I get it right? Did I miss anything important? The teacher was there also. Let's remember this. The teacher was there. And so I might have seen something, but I wasn't there yesterday. I didn't realize how significant it was, so I didn't write it down. So the teacher might sort of tell me that was important, I'd like to add that. So, okay, we go back and forth on that, just the notes. Now, that's challenging to do, it's challenging to do well, but it is the easy part, because the hard part comes next. Everybody knows, any parent knows, every teacher, that the same events can be interpreted in more than one way. And so now the question is, I'm going to skip over this for just a moment. We've got 3 pieces of evidence, let's say, about respect and rapport. Now my question is not what happened. We have agreed on that. The question is, what does it mean? That is, which of these collections of words best characterize or summarize those 3 things? And so if I'm doing this, I will have my evidence. I will take this either electronically or on paper. I'll take a highlighter and highlight. And I don't have to do a whole box. I can do a phrase here, a bit there, because the key is to sort of reflect the evidence. But here is the real innovation. I do that as the observer. I ask the teacher to do the same. Take a highlighter. You interpret the evidence. Now we come together in the conversation and we share our highlights and our interpretation. And I have to be open-minded enough. Well, let me back up here. I'm the principal. My judgment is the one that counts in the end. However, I have to be open-minded enough to sort of accept that I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'm not there every day. I don't know. There's a lot I can't know if I'm not there. So it truly is a conversation, and it's important that it not be super high stakes because then the teacher is defensive. Right? So it has to be honest. But when that happens, that is where the learning occurs for the teacher, is in that conversation. Examining what happened in light of the rubric, and then you eventually agree, well, this is at the basic level now. Let's just move our eyes to the right and see, well, how can it be done a little bit differently and be even better? Even better. And so on. So that's the conversation. That's where the value is. It's not about the score. It's just not. It's about the conversation. And we have heard this hundreds of times. I now have 43 or something consultants who run around and do training and so on. We hear this every day. That's where the value is. And I'm sure it is with student teachers as well. I've had very limited experience so far, but I'm sure it's the same thing with teacher publishing. So, okay. So just a few quick things about the framework. I've said most of this. I'll just mention the last bullet here about it being independent of any teaching methodology. You know, we're a badish profession, in case you haven't noticed. I mean, initiatives come and go. Well, I don't know if they ever go. I mean, they just sort of come, right? We've had, and I'm not knocking them. They offer us, we've had cooperative learning and learning styles and brain chemistry and low intelligences and right? These things can also be somewhat seductive. I mean, let's say I teach fourth grade and I go to a workshop and read a book on cooperative learning. I think, this is powerful. I should be doing everything this way. Well, actually, no. I don't know about you. I've been in plenty of classrooms where kids are working in groups and they are learning nothing. They are sharing their ignorance. I mean, the question is not whether cooperative learning is a powerful strategy. No, we know the answer. The answer is yes. That's the wrong question. The better question is, under what circumstances, for what purposes is cooperative learning a powerful strategy? And which is why teachers need a repertoire, and they need the judgment to know when to do what. That's why this is a profession. And that's why the conversations and so on. Okay, I don't want to belabor it, but just to make that point. So, okay, just so to wrap this up then, that both teacher practices and results are important indicators of effectiveness, no question of that. They both pose formidable technical and psychological challenges, no doubt about that. I think the difference is that we're further along in figuring out how to address those challenges with teacher practices than we are with the measure of student learning, although I defer to your expertise on that. They both should be highly evolved before they're used for high stakes decisions. I worry tremendously about this one. But when they're back done well, they can both yield big benefits, and I do believe that. And then any approach now to teacher evaluation really has to reflect that. So I'm afraid I'm hoping we have a little bit of time for that more, but we have minutes. So I appreciate your attention and the opportunity. Thank you so much.